For sure.
It's obvious now that I made the transition from public official to private citizen.
Having a lot of regrets. I
No,
know.
I
I can see it.
some regrets, but the biggest thing is with Mother Nature pissed off at me. She must be, because I haven't been able to play golf yet.
We're all suffering from Mother Nature. I'm getting cabin fever so bad. It's not fun.
Congratulations.
Oh, we just got a different story here.
Oh, what'd you hear?
We heard that you won by 60.
No. Unless something's changed.
Yeah.
No, that was Doug.
Oh, that was Doug, okay. Yeah. 7, oh.
Yeah. The write-in candidates.
So they do a recall.
Yeah. She's already declared, she's already said it, but she has until Tuesday to make it official. And then they have to give me 24 hours notice.
Then what, the 2 of you go and count? Can you both be armed?
Well, then Keller's gonna contest his too, I assume.
Yeah.
We'll call the meeting
Thank
to
you,
order.
Gordie.
First thing, I need confirmation we are legally posted.
Yes, it was, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from the March 10th,
So moved.
2022 meeting.
Second.
Motion?
Second,
Any amendments, changes? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposition, motion carried unanimous. Any public comments? Hearing none. We'll go to announcements.
Okay, first off, I just want to thank the committee again for adjusting the time today to allow me to go to P&F and get my budget transfer completed. Just an update on filling, as you all saw, Mike Haas retired on, or Hayes retired on April 1st last week. So we're working on filling the position. It's been somewhat challenging with the job market. We did offer it to somebody this week. We couldn't meet the pay that he wanted, so we're back to the drawing board, putting the blast out there again, and hopefully get some good candidates to get that position filled. It's a bad time for our department with construction season coming up, but we are all gonna pull together to keep our heads above water the best we can to get the projects in, but it will be nice to get somebody on full time, hopefully soon. Our tree day is next Wednesday. So we have about 17,000 trees this year, so not a whole lot, but we'll be holding that all day on the 13th of April.
That expo
That is here actually.
back here,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Our 2022 plat book is complete. We should be getting that within a week or so. I think it turned out really nice, and Andy put a lot of time into it. So we have a digital option this year as well. We're going to order 150 to start. And then if those sell, we could just buy them on a need by need basis instead of buying them in bulk and getting overwhelmed with all these plat books that are piling in our closet right now. So I think it's a better way to handle it so we can manage it. LCC appointments for the citizen members. So that is, I'm gonna be sending that to Sue Erber to go on the county board agenda on April 26th. So that would be, I spoke with the executive about it. We're looking at group on the committee, and then Dan Stokes is the new chair of FSA. So he would be the public person. So that would be on the agenda for county board. Yeah, it would be a nice addition for the committee. And then the last thing, I just want to say it's been a pleasure for those committee members that aren't going to be on the committee anymore, Tom, Ben, and we'll see how everything shakes out with the assignment on committees, but it's been enjoyable. I think we have things going in a really good direction, and you know, that's with your support, and I really appreciate that. So we'll see where things go, but again, it's been a pleasure working with you for the last couple of years. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chad. I'm gonna kind of echo those comments under chair report here. It's certainly been my pleasure, if not an honor, to serve as chairman of the committee. Appreciate your support, and I think this committee has really taken the forefront to implement policy and practices, and we've done a super job. So hopefully those who are coming back will try to get on the committee and continue that work, which would be great. Once again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to chair the committee. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move to the business items. Progress report and update on the multi-discharge variance MDV program. You should have some maps. Assume Chad's going to be referring to those, correct?
Melanie's.
Oh,
gonna
Mel.
do that.
The joy of Mel today.
So yes, MTV has been something that we've been started working with in 2019. I think we applied right in 2019, right, Chad? It's kind
Sounds
of,
about right.
yeah, this is kind of jumping over different staff too here, but yes, we applied in 2019. We had 2 projects on board to start construction in 2020. And unfortunately, we had one landowner pass away, and then they had to wait for the estate to be settled. And then the other one, we got stuck in permitting holdback after holdback because it was wooded wetlands, floodway, shoreline zoning, a whole bunch of different permits and discussions that needed to take place. So
This was in the Fond du Lac drainage area.
yes, you will have your map of I don't know that they're labeled, but it'll be the one that has the smaller. I don't think they're- So it'll say the city of Oshkosh, Van Dyne, and Willow Harbor at the bottom left corner.
The Huck 8 would be the Lake Winnebago watershed.
Say that again.
The Lake Winnebago watershed is
Yeah.
what these 3 would be.
Does they have 12 on there?
They're broken down.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. Both
No, you're
projects
fine.
were delayed, correct?
Yeah, so those projects got delayed. And then, of course, the pandemic took place, so 2020 was kind of a hard time because you couldn't really do a lot of interactions to try and drum up the business. So last year was a crazy year. We got, if you have the eval modeling, kind of has the different colors on there. So basically what we did was we looked at this eval model is erosion vulnerability assessment for agricultural lands. So it basically looks at where is your highest erosion potential based on slopes and land use. And it's calculated through that. So then with that, Andy worked to target the reds, which are the highest erosion vulnerability areas. And we also took a look at where we could see visual erosion based on aerial photos. And we sent out 113 letters to those landowners this spring to try and spend the rest of our 2019 funds. So each year, is everybody familiar with what the MDV program is? As far
I believe
as,
so.
so if the municipality or the waste point source cannot meet their reduction goals, then they have to put 50 pounds towards each pound of phosphorus that they can't control. So that money can go into different places, but one is through this program, and then we utilize those funds to pay for these. So each year, whatever their reduction that they can't meet is, we get a sum of money for that amount. And then we use it to try and do these phosphorus reduction projects. So in 2019, do you have a question? Okay. In 2019, we had 53,856.73, so that is the money that we were trying to spend in the 2019 dollars. So with that, we had the two projects that we signed up in 2019, and then we had another project that we signed up this last year. And then in 2020, we had 13,416.50, which we signed up one project through those dollars as well. And all four of those projects went in last fall. And a little later than we would have preferred. But we had to use the money because at the end of 2021, that $53,000 was off the table. We had to get them in. That's why I don't have great after photos, but I'm hoping now. Andy's been working with the drone. Last year he tried to fly the drone, but Starry was not cooperative last year because with the new drone, there's certain restrictions that we had to work through. But I think he's got a handle on it now, so.
Yeah, it basically, those particular sites were in a restricted airspace. And this is a little aside, but just it's interesting. The new drone is smart enough to know when it's in a restricted airspace. Our older drone basically was incumbent upon the pilot to recognize they were in restricted airspace and then call the appropriate, in this case, the tower, and say, hey, we're flying here, we're going to be done. Well, in this case, our new drone is smart enough that it recognizes it's in restricted airspace and it just won't fly. So I had not anticipated that. And basically what you have to do, and I've since learned how to do it, is basically there's an online submission form. So it basically will download a waiver that will allow it to then take off. So when we go back out to that site, knowing what I know now, I'll be able to submit that online waiver, and I believe it's for 2 days. It will be in the drone, and then after that it expires. So it's really pretty sophisticated, kind of neat, on one hand, but then on the other hand, boy, it was nice with the old one where I could just make a phone call.
Yeah.
So
So
with the thing that you're putting in, is there an altitude restriction then?
Yeah, that's my second question. What is that?
well, it depends upon the airspace. So in this particular airspace, it's 100 feet. In other airspace, typical unrestricted flight areas, it's 400. And depending upon what I'm doing, I'll usually, whatever is required, if I'm mapping, I'm going to fly as high as I can to cover as much area. But if I'm, want nice close-ups, well, obviously I just fly low. So, but in this particular, it's 100 feet.
And a lot of these projects are right around the airport, so
Right.
Yeah.
we weren't having any luck in trying to get that off the ground last fall during construction, so.
Things coming and landing all the time.
Yeah,
Can I ask this question? When you're flying over and you're looking for areas of erosion, what does that look like? Does it just sort of look like brown streaks in the middle of green?
Yeah, gullies.
That's how you identify erosion?
Mhm.
Okay.
And yeah, a lot of it, sometimes you can see it right from our whole countywide aerial photos, but in one case, it can save you a lot of footwork and maybe even a twisted ankle, especially if the crops are up. When you can fly over that field and see it remotely rather than having to hike through the fields.
And then what do we do to remedy that, or how do we help the landowner?
I'll let
Oh,
the
okay.
experts
That's where you
answer
pass
that.
it
That's where I'm going next.
so yes, through these 4 projects, we put in 4,006 feet of stream bank protection. So basically, what was happening on that site is there was an old bridge that was restricting the flow in the waterway. The trees were growing up and closing the channel. And then it was struggling, the water was struggling to get through. So it was going out alongside the channel and washing huge areas of sediment out.
Yeah.
So in order to repair that, you have to increase your capacity within the channel to try and get that flow capacity back. So that's why a lot of this took so long to get, because I not only had to remove all the trees on the channel, which zoning, you know, I had to educate the zoning people and then they left, so I had to take new zoning people out and educate that as well. You know, a lot of times you want to keep the trees if you have trout habitat or because it keeps the channel cooler. But in this situation, we don't have kind of that habitat, so my issue is more water quality. So opening that channel up gives it more capacity, keeps it from going out and around and eroding. I mean, it was pretty substantial, the erosion he was having out in his fields. But then it was also a floodway, so I had to get permission to fill in a floodway. Because those old channels, I mean, the gullies in one area was probably 3 feet deep. And if I don't fill that back in, that water coming from upslope is just gonna keep running down there. So trying to get permission to fill in the floodway took a while. I had to go through multiple people in DNR, but, so that's why some of that got,
Did you need a
Long.
chapter 30 permit? Is what it required?
no, just as long as I did not fill above the original grade, I was, it was fine for me to do.
Yeah.
And I also stayed in the stream bank protection, I stayed above the ordinary high water mark. So if I went below that ordinary high water mark, then I had to work through a chapter 30. But they said the likelihood of me getting a chapter 30 was maybe questionable, because these are channels with stream history and navigable, so
Yeah.
they're pretty substantial channels, really close to Lake Winnebago, so.
You're in a town of Wolf River then?
Yep,
Or Black Wolf?
on Kelpine,
Yeah, Black Wolf.
Black Wolf.
Black Wolf,
Black
yep. On Kelpine there, so they're really close and huge drainage areas, I think they were one was almost 3,000 acres drainage area, and the other one was just under 3, so.
That ground's pretty flat over there.
Yes,
So this, the tree growth was what you're dealing with for the most part. Do we ever have natural things like beavers having built their habitat, their dams that impact that, or we don't even have it in the beaver
I haven't
situation?
seen that in my situation, I think that that would probably be more of a marshy area, I'm sure they.
Because I had heard someplace the beaver populations are down all over, and I didn't know if that was, if we were impacting that or something else was, not we, not you, but I mean like
Yeah,
human, whatever.
yeah, I haven't seen much for beaver activity in Winnebago County, I don't know about anybody else, but. In my, you know, I see it up north all the time when I'm up there, you know, you can see the trees that are just point snow. But I haven't seen it around here much. Could just be the environment isn't as nice for beaver habitat.
I think it's more heavy forest. is
Yeah.
really-
I think the only place is that conservation area we did over around the northwest corner of Winnie County up there. It's out by Boone Bay.
Okay.
They might have some beaver out there.
I know Stabeno's had an issue 2 years ago.
Stavro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So they
they're around.
are in the county, they're just pretty rare. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, this was just, it grows in and it chokes the channel out, and so we pulled the bridge out, regraded the banks to more of a slope to increase that capacity. And replace the gullies on the sides, and we'll see what this year brings and hope for no 5-inch rains. So that was one project. Another project was across from Brighton Acres, if anybody's familiar with where that is, over off of Fisk and Clay Road. It's a wedding venue / that's where our big volleyball tournament is every year. So there's a farm right across the road. It's got some slope and was having really bad erosion over there. That was the one where the landowner passed away in 2019, and I had to wait for the estate to be settled. Which just happened in the beginning of 2021. So that was a set of 3.3 acres of waterway systems. So we did some grass waterways out there to try and control the erosion that was occurring. And that was some pretty substantial erosion. I think everybody in our office knew about that site, having driven by it. So, and all of these are found in the red categories on our maps too. And then we did a small, I had to call it a critical area stay, but it's basically a grass waterway on the site on the old map as well. So those were the main ones pulling from the 2019 funds. And then we also did a waterway system for another landowner that was having some pretty heavy erosion. And that would come out of the 2020 fund. So my next project is to get the rest, well, the next project, we have to do a report on the funds that were spent last year. We have to do a request of carrying over the money from the rest of the money from the 2020. And then do we just had our annual report for the 2021 funds, so we should be all good to go. And I have a project lined up in that area as well. That's going to have a waterway, a riparian buffer, and I think 3 wetlands. So we should have the rest of that money spent on that project. But otherwise, I've also received a lot of contacts from all the letters we sent out. So we should be able to tie that up. Now, this year, 2022, we thought there was about, what was it, 2,000
no.
that we thought we would apply for. We're like, oh, 2,000, we want to submit for just 2,000, go through all. We decided we're gonna go for it, just see what this year brings. Well, they surprised us because if money, well, one of them we didn't know was in there. But they surprised if this watershed over here, if nobody applies for that money, they just kind of shift it over into the next watershed. So we thought we were gonna get $2,000 around, and we ended up getting almost $22,000 in funding. So, but this is actually for a different watershed, and that's why I have that second map in there. So right
But
now.
still, the money's coming from the fund,
That would be 3 different wastewater treatment plants. It'd be Westfield, Green Lake, and Fond du Lac. for that one.
we're getting off too far, right?
Which, from an administration standpoint, it gets a little complicated tracking it. That's the thing with MDB is different years, different point sources. We have to keep our head on straight, just managing that. All the watershed plans we have to get approved. We're doing our first annual report right now. We have about 14,000 of staffing money that's going to be in that report. We're going to pull in the budget for the department. So we got to track our hours for just this fund spent in 19, but there's some overlap and it gets a little bit of a nightmare trying to do all of it. So it's just part of it. For a little bit of money we get, we'll have to really think long and hard in the future, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I would think that needs to be okay.
And you know, if you think you're gonna sign it, some counties signed up for 20,000 and they got 100 and some thousand. You know, I mean, when you're not expecting that amount of money, you know, do you have the staff on board to be able to handle that increase? You know, there's a chance that we could apply for 120,000. So
How do you account for that kind of largesse that, you know, you ask for a little and you get this, how do you account for that, or can you?
You can't. I mean, like Mel's saying, what happens here is we are the only one in this watershed, so these funds, for example, for Westfield, that goes to that whole upper Potts watershed, there's 7 counties or so in the area. We're the only one that applied, so then we get all the money. You have no idea what other counties are going to apply for the funds. So you don't know until the checks start coming in March. And that's what happened to us. All of a sudden, we're getting thousands of dollars coming into the department. And then you have to spend it within a couple of years, so 2 years to do it. But yeah, if you get an extra $100,000, you better be ready to adjust. you're accountable for it. So,
Don't that make you wonder why the other conservation departments aren't applying?
Yeah,
I
that's
think-
what I was wondering.
I think it's
There must be
exactly,
something there.
I think it's exactly what I'm saying. How complicated it is, and the little bit of money that a lot of them are getting, it's just not worth the time.
Yeah, they just don't have the staff to dedicate to that.
And it's very cryptic sometimes, our communication with them. You know, it's like they have an agenda in mind, but they won't tell you what their agenda is. They'll just kind of hint that it's not what they want. They won't really tell you what they want.
So yeah, DNR, they approve our plan one year, and then the next year they're asking for all these other things. It's the exact same plan. And they're making it way more complicated. I think they're asking for more than they probably should be, and it's making a lot of the counties hesitate to even apply for it because of what it.
They were trying to tell me that a waterway is not a phosphorus BMP. Like you can't get much more phosphorus BMP than a waterway or wetland scrape, or if you're stabilizing the soil to keep it from moving off site.
Did
You're
DNR
also-
said that?
Our one contact that is overseeing us in DNR said that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Is there any way of working collaboratively with other counties?
I have brought that up, Karen, to other counties and some of our bigger meetings, that it would be nice to coordinate with all of them before we have to apply January 1st as the deadline. So if we got to the table, say, December 15th and said, okay, this is Outagamie County's year to apply, you go for all the funds just to be efficient, and then every other county backs off and kind of take turns. I brought that up, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think that's a really good idea. It would help save some of the hassle.
so yes, now we have 22, almost 22,000 to spend, and the first step will be trying to do this same modeling, send out letters to different landowners within that area. I don't know that we'll do the 113, but we might target 20 or some, send letters out, see what response we get, and then go from there and just keep going. You know, sometimes this does also drum up projects for other funding sources within, you know, we have the county program. So we have also shifted some of the projects that we've gotten from the 113 letters out into different funding sources. So it's definitely working for what we wanted it to kind of open that edge of communication up and be able to have some kind of interactions with people outside of, you know, what we've been doing, especially coming outside and not being able to talk to people for about 2 years. So
And I feel like we haven't done enough of that, you know, the sitting at the kitchen table, going on the farm, that was missing for a while there. I feel like these letters got us back out on the farms and drummed up business, even beyond the MDB, like Nels alluded to. We have other programs we can use, like one of the projects she put in, we complemented it with a county program, so she did the whole stream bank protection, and then we're entering into our buffer program, so they're gonna put a buffer along that perennial stream.
Yeah.
But it was, in my opinion, highly successful, the approach we took, so I was really happy with the outcome.
Are these project cost sharing involved or not?
Yep,
Yeah,
Yeah.
what percent?
it's at a 70 unless they go above and beyond, like the one we're talking about, where we're doing a buffer, that would have to be a 90% cost share on that.
and the wetland restorations at the new site as well as the buffer, so that would be funded at 90 as well.
Okay, I've got another question about this big money, big money, big money. Okay, so you get this huge grant that you weren't expecting, and you have to spend it within a couple of years' time. And with that kind of money, you actually could afford, you could hire people who only have a job for 2 years. Are we allowed to pay them above what the county limits are because it's coming from grant money? So we can actually utilize it and put a few people to work
We would,
on a big project and make it worth their while, take a job for 2 years, knowing they're getting substantial pay?
Competitive
Am I making any sense here?
yeah, yes, you are. So we would have to look at the position. Are we gonna call it a conservation technician? Is it a project manager for the MDB? And then they would categorize it based on where it fits in the wage plan. And then we move forward. But the problem is, yeah, we don't know how much money we're gonna get. You're up against the wall, so you find out in March, you get all this money.
That's what I'm saying, the money has come in, and now, this is not gonna impact the budget or taxes in any way, because it's a grant. Why can't we pay these people what we need to pay them to get them to come and take the job for 2 years?
Yes, I'd have to talk to HR, but typically they put you in where you give a job description and they categorize it based on location, unless you contract it out, maybe there's flexibility there without benefits, we just pay like a contractor, that would have to be discussions with.
There's a limitation, what is it, 30%?
We could use 35% of
35.
funds for staff within the.
So like for this one, it would be 7,000 would be about
So
8,000.
you can't even hire somebody, that's everyone at High Hopes when they saw the big numbers, and you can't even hire one staff to do it, so. So if
And
you've got 100,000, you can only use 35,000 of it, that's not even
No.
half my stuff.
and the other problem we're having right now is there's just not the knowledgeable people that are coming to apply. So I would have to train somebody to do it, and in that time of me trying to train them how to design and build things on AutoCAD and do all those steps.
That's a 3-year process to get a technician just kind of up and running, in my opinion. It takes time.
So it's kind of, at this point, unless we start to see some big numbers, I think at this point, we're just gonna try and do it with in-house. You know, maybe if we're looking at a large chunk of money, that might be an option. But right now, the job market is just so thin as well. You know, we're struggling to fill a full-time technician position right
Because we're not paying enough, probably, right?
Yeah, it's not, if you want someone with experience, this kind of stuff, it's gotta be at least $70,000 or
And
$80,000.
it's not.
Realistically, someone with good experience, you know.
now. And
that's
I've
hard.
been here 20 some years.
I think just across the board, there needs to be some sort of jump in that, because
Yeah.
There's a job opening right now at NRCS or is it FSA? I just got an email. FSA.
Yeah, I think they're shifting maybe into a different county, so.
We're not having trouble signing people up because of the cost of the dollar commitment by the landlord. That's an issue with this $3 million.
I have not,
Eliminate that caution.
No, I think, if you do it 90%, that really helps.
yeah,
They have 10% in the game, I think that's fair, you can sell it then.
they're more apt to maintain it than if they have some input into it.
And that, you mentioned the $3 million, and that's in the back of my head too with this program. If that were to get approved or even half of that down the road, that's gonna be the focus of the department. So spending a lot of time on the administration part on the MDV program, I
Yeah,
just can't justify it.
I would think that would avoid this.
Unless they make it a lot easier. But right now, they're not making it a lot easier,
It's going the opposite direction.
so. Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a struggle, but. We'll see how this next thing goes. I'd like to get 2022 dollars started soon, so Andy's in the process of. Actually, you've got all the eval modeling done for the county, so the next step will be trying to send some letters out in those areas.
And we'll have to pick the highest loading sub watershed in the upper Fox is gonna be a focus. So we'll look at the TMDL and some of the plans we have.
Already?
It's kind of a update. There's so much in there that I know I kind of jumped around a little bit, but
Oh, I think everybody gets.
it's the gist.
Are there any questions from Zoom? Bruce?
Well, the only question I'd have is, we're gonna talk about the waters of the United States after a little bit, and just the impact of that even for you, for Melanie, for you guys to do your work, or Chad, how does that all affect? I know we're gonna talk about that, but how will that affect local, if the feds have to come in and put a rubber stamp on everything you look at, how will that affect progress or process or?
In a perfect world where we've got projects waiting, it wouldn't be so bad. But a lot of times we are just trying to stay afloat on what we have, so, it depends on the turnaround time. It could be, it's been sometimes 6 months, after the project is installed, that we would get a letter from,
The
Army
federal
Corps.
government, the Corps is not always fast, so if you're ready to go, if, weather comes together, you have funding, and you're sitting on a permit, and 6 months go by, you could use that window to get it done. Especially with these grants that we have, like we just talked about, where it's, we need to get the money spent, it could kill some of those projects, so it is concerning, and then the extra cost on the landowner too, if we have to have extra federal permits and,
you're also assuming good weather. Contractor availability. The projects we signed up in 2021 here, they were already planted, so we had to wait for the crops to come off. If we can be more ahead of the game, that's why we need to take this next step, so that kind of gives me 2 years to be able to get these people on board to talk about what they're planting next year, so we can kind of set some land aside or figure out a plan, so we're not building them in the end of the year. So just have to have more. planning.
Again, I know you're cognizant of the fact, the delays that possible. I just wanted to make that statement just for the sake of getting on record or something, that once they get involved, it's just gonna muddle up what that local level controls, so.
Definitely another cog in an already hard area with all the permitting and everything, so, gosh, I can't even imagine if that would have came in on Waco's.
so we wouldn't have gotten the project done.
I'm glad we got that one in ahead of this, because,
When I was getting my wastewater treatment plant license many years ago for ink paper, the instructor always said, when you're talking about government involvement, think glacier, not like.
That's the truth.
That's just where it would be.
yeah, so that's sometimes a struggle with these money, that's why I like our county program, because if you have a bad year or it gets too late in the year, you can just carry it over to the next year. Whereas the swarm dollars and our MPD funds, you have a bad year, that money runs out. Sometimes you're pushing projects in when you know they shouldn't go, because you have to get that money spent. And then you just hope for good weather and hope it doesn't, we had that 50-mile-an-hour winds last fall, and it blew a lot of my netting off of my waterway projects with the force of the wind. So on one of my projects, all the netting on one side of my stream protection blew off and the other side stayed. So it'll be a great comparison of how it handled, how the netting handled versus not, because at that point we couldn't put it back in. It was on the trees and it's blown everywhere. So just never all these different things.
And hopefully things start greening up soon. Sure is delayed this year.
Yeah, we're all thinking the same thing. Bruce wants to get home and start working the field, right?
Coming home tonight.
Oh, really?
Thank you, Mel. Any other questions for Mel? Joy?
None for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mel. If there's nothing else, we'll move on.
All right.
Number B, discuss the USDA's partnership with Climate Smart Commodities Grants. We should have a copy of document that was furnished. Chad, what's this all about?
All right, so this is kind of a last second potential grant that came up, and I'm going to go through the two scenarios. The first one I'll talk about is the map I included. That's the scope area for that one for our county. But essentially what this grant program is, there's $1 billion in the grant program. And the idea of the program is to work with processors and farmers. So processors being like your General Mills, your companies that are buying the goods from the farmers, to make that connection where they can put on their products that is, say, for example, farm sustainable. So if they're doing like soil health practices and doing good conservation on their land, they can promote their products that way. So making that connection between the two. And then ultimately what the grant is for carbon sequestration and greenhouse gases. So with that, you're gonna get a water quality benefit, obviously, for those practices, but the focus of these proposals are those two things. So it's a little different way of looking at this. You know, we've been on the cost share wagon for years. And the hope is that we can make that connection with the farmers and the processors, where we can get the farmers trained on the carbon credit training and all that, and we can walk away and not have to provide cost sharing. So the first proposal, the first agency that contacted me was the DNR. So one proposal is going to be with the DNR and the 4 counties in the Lower Fox watershed, and that would be the map that I had in your packet. So that would be Brown County, Outagamie, Calumet, and us. And we'd be looking at signing up about 16,000 acres for soil health. And they really liked how we structure our soil health program in their department that you all approved back a few years. So they're taking that same concept where you start the payments out low, and in that last year, you get a higher payment in the end. The difference is it's not going to be a 6-year program, it's going to be a 4-year because it's the 5-year grant. So we had to shrink down the contract a little bit to make it work for this grant. For our county, again, we have a small part of the Lower Fox, it's that maroon color on the map. We felt comfortable signing up 500 acres in that watershed. They're a little bit more difficult farmers, I would say late adopters with soil health practices. We didn't want to overcommit what we could do. So that's why we said 500 acres for soil health. Also in that proposal would be riparian buffers, and they'd be 15-year contracts at 13,500 an acre. So we're talking some big payments here. Maybe for a 15-year contract, we're hoping to get 85 acres signed up. Harvestable buffers is another one. That would be at $8,000 an acre for a 15-year contract. And then tree planting is another part of this that we can do. So forested buffers, planting trees, we had $15,500 an acre for planting trees and getting those established for a 15-year contract.
So that dollar amount is over the 15 year,
They'll be paid all up front.
all up front,
Yeah.
about $1,000.
Yes,
And
they
then-
range it,
yeah.
yes, yes. Great, yep,
Well, that's pretty good.
they're pretty good payments, so we wanted to get conservation on the land, and they said, think outside the box. There's $1 billion, so put your best ideas out there, what we think we can do.
This actually parallels the focus that this committee's had for the last several months regarding that $300.
It does,
In
yeah, to some degree.
yeah.
Yep, yep. Prairie strips is also at 15,500. And then they had innovative newer management like vermiculture. That's where you use earthworms, like almost like a composting with create worm castings, solid separation, irrigation. They had 4 farms on there at $1 million each. That's going to be more in the other counties. We don't have big farms within our county. The other thing they had in here was staff. They had 8 to 9 staff identified. I was not looking at adding additional staff for this proposal because we have a small part of the watershed. We have that new position now, so I think that would complement what they're doing. So it's about $18 million would be the proposal for this one with DNR. So these are early stages talking about it, and we'll see where this shakes out for that one. So that was going on, and then
If I might clarify, is that 18 million just for our county? No. That's
This
for
would
the
be-
3.
it would be 4 counties
4
and DNR. So for us, the
Very
main thing would be
substantial amount.
it's a substantial amount. So it'd be the practices for us.
And this is a proposal. What's the implementation timeframe?
We will know in October of this year if it's got it awarded, so we'd start implementation probably in 23.
Okay. So the committee's responsibility would be to give approval to start moving. Right?
Yes, if it gets approved, then I would take it to committee.
Okay.
So that's one proposal. Now, same pot of money, another proposal. This one is with Edge Dairy Cooperative. So they're working multi-states for proposals for smaller projects, and the one I'm going to describe is one of the smaller projects amongst a bunch of big projects. So this one would be, the focus area would be the entire upper Foxwell Basin. So that would include almost our entire county for this one. And the idea with this would be to provide cost sharing. It's going to be at a lower rate. It's going to be at the NRCS rates. So it's going to be a little bit lower. And for our county, we'd be looking at 3,000 acres for our county to sign up for soil health initiatives, and 25,000 acres countywide, or basin-wide. So the counties would be Outagamie, Brown, Calumet, us, Fond du Lac, Waushara, Wapak, and Shawn. And then for each one of those counties, they are proposing to have a project staff to hire for each county. And the idea of that position is to provide support throughout the year for the farmers, but then to gain an understanding of that carbon market and kind of teach the farmers how to work with the carbon market, trade carbon credits, make that connection for each county. So there'd be training involved in all that. All your regenerative agricultural principles or soil health principles. So a little bit different angle with it. That's also around 17, 18 million. There's some money in there for, like I said, the practices for soil health and also for the vermiculture as well. So this would be same time frame, 2023. I can see this happening, but this could be potentially an additional staff board department for 5 years that would be fully funded, for wages, fringes, the truck would be provided, and some of the computer costs is all built into this. So there shouldn't be anything out of the levy for the county, other than I might have to buy a computer. That would be the only thing that I could buy. And then fuel.
So that makes that a little more attractive.
Yeah, I like the flexibility going county-wide. That's nice. We're very limited in the other one.
Yeah.
So the reason I jumped in with both is because I feel like the other one, we're not committing a whole lot, just 500 acres. And if we got both for some reason, I feel like if we got a staff, it'd be easy to do it. I said I wasn't gonna hire another staff so soon, but
That might be an opportunity.
Chad,
yeah.
did you have a handout sheet on that you sent out on that stuff?
The climate smart commodity, it should have been in your packet. And then there's a map attached with it. Did you all get that? Yeah.
Climate smart?
Climate smart commodities.
Yep.
Partnerships.
Okay,
Yep, that's the one. That explains it.
Actually, I got 2 of them if you want it.
well, I gotta ask you a question. How, are you gonna be asking the farmers or getting this out into the public at some point, or what's the process?
Well, there would be, if it was awarded, there would be some major outreach. There might even be, I think there was a potentially an outreach position, but there's a plan that we will be doing outreach with farmers. We're working through some of those details right now and what the whole, I mean, we have our overall focus area, but DNR is pushing for us to base it on the highest polluting subwatersheds first, to start doing our outreach to connect with farmers, but we're pushing back a little bit because if we, you know, we put a lot of time in some of those watersheds and there's a lot of these outliers we'd like to focus on. One of them being CAFOs. CAFOs are eligible for these funds, and typically they're not. So those are a lot of acres we could get signed up, but the outreach is being thought about right now. How we're going to do that.
And that would all be discussed and evaluated during the beginning of this next term, obviously before October.
Yeah, the deadline to apply for this is early May. They extended the deadline, and then we would know in October if we were awarded or not. So
Also, the committee needs to make the decision.
well, I'm just writing a letter of support, but we're not signing on the dotted line. If we get the proposal, if the grant gets accepted, we have to accept it then, and I would not do that until we get committee approval. Once we know.
so this will be for work for 23 and beyond?
Yeah, 23 and then 5 years after. It's a 5-year grant with the potential of, I think, 2-year extension possibly. It's a lot of money, but it's nationwide, so it might be highly competitive. We don't know yet. But again, there's $1 billion sitting there in this pot of money, and there's no in-kind match with the grant, which is crazy. And we set the prices, that's what they told us, that's why we're coming up with some of these numbers. That we're able to be creative with it, which I've never seen anything like this. It almost seems too good to be true. That there's no in-kind, we're able to kind of create our own parameters, but that's what.
It's out of that free money stuff.
I know it's a lot to take in, but yeah, things are moving quite fast right now, and two things at the same time, and it's trying to keep my head on straight with both proposals has been fun the last couple of weeks.
So we'll be discussing it again, probably next month, I assume.
I think so.
Ongoing.
Yeah, I think once we know more what the proposal is, I can give the committee an update, then it's sit waiting to see.
Is there any questions from Julie?
No,
Okay,
Nice. Adam.
I'd speak up if I had one.
One concern I do have with this is the one proposal asking for, well, both proposals are asking for about 8 staff. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a horrible job market right now to find people. That is concerning to me to be able to find good people. That's going to be challenging.
are you saying 8 staff per county?
No, this would be basin wide.
Okay,
So
yeah, so we maybe need one, huh?
we would need one.
Yeah.
So it'd be like 8 agronomists within the
Yeah.
basin, but it's still challenging right now. That would be one concern.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Chad.
I'm still going back to this notion of getting all this money and not being able to staff it. Is this the kind of job that we could offer an intern who's graduating with another year or a semester to go in this field that would really jump at a chance for this?
Some of the basics with an intern would be helpful. You know, the basic surveying, you know, maybe doing inventory, some of the in-office work. There could be some benefit there, to just alleviate some of that workload with the department, because like LTE or summer help. I've been thinking about that. But
Well, maybe if you just for the summer, if this is a job that's gonna take more than a year, that could be a gap. For them, a gap in actual university work, but they've got an internship, getting some real hands-on experience,
oh yeah,
plus being paid.
yep. I know the executives supportive of LTE positions from what I heard, so that could be something we could look at.
I've got something to say about this.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, there's so much money right now, and it's a heck of an opportunity, but you need to have the people to do it and qualified people. And then to be able to manage it too, from my standpoint, you know, I can only handle so much before I have to start to think about dissecting the department a little bit. You know?
Well, in addition to that, we're gonna get into, I can just hear the debate with this new commission that's being formed. Why do you want more of the high-term COVID money
Yes,
when you've got all this money coming in on these grants?
I thought
Right.
about that, yeah, but just keep in
So,
mind that if we get the one proposal, it's just for the lower Fox, and the other one, the rates aren't, in my opinion, the greatest, and it's 3,000 acres. The ARPA money that we're asking for goes way beyond. There's some little bit of soil health in there, which is important, but then we have, you know, the break walls, the waterways, all these other things that we don't have a big pot of money.
So one grant is restricted to certain projects. COVID or ARPA funds are not.
More
Assuming
like,
we're getting part of the $10 million pot. So that would be, yeah, that would be a good selling.
yeah, it's definitely not gonna capture everything down that proposal.
Okay, any questions for Chad? Thanks.
Well, I do have one. Is this a fallout or part of that other plan that the county, well, that we were asking for money to do projects with?
No, this is federal money.
This is
Something-
totally separate.
Yeah, I mean, the other money is federal too, but this is something totally separate. Yep.
Where did that other program fall? Did that go by the wayside or?
No, a commission was appointed And they're gonna leave it up to the commission to decide where the money goes. So it's
Yeah,
still
well-
there, we're still after it. We just gotta convince the commission to say okay to it.
That's time sensitive too, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know, that was our point. I assume that commission is gonna be established in May. And the county board decided not to hire a facilitator. So I expect that's gonna be a good 6 months out before we start getting into any real decisions. At least 3 months.
Well, Chad, if you just keep us abreast of that on an ongoing basis also.
Yeah, and that part will be important if we can get it where it's more flexibility for the department, where there isn't a sunset on the funds, that's gonna be really important for you.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no more questions, we'll move on to C. Review and approve the resolution, which you should have a copy of, specific to waters of the United States, acronym WOTUS. I think we had this discussion last month, as I recall. You now have the resolution before you for approval or disapproval or amendment that will go to the county board. So that's open.
I will move to adopt the resolution as presented.
I have a motion to adopt as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ben. Discussion.
Who put this resolution together? What, did this come out of our committee or did legal do this or?
The discussion was between Chad and I. Chad pretty much wrote it up with the cooperation and knowledge of Corp Counsel.
Okay,
I know there's a lot of information here in the agenda item report. I was just trying to capture it because it is somewhat confusing. So I apologize if it's a little long-winded, but I wasn't sure how else to get the information out.
the overall intent is just to keep some control within the local governments.
Yes. The overall intent is to keep the control we currently have now. Without federal intervention, including permitting process.
Bruce, it was getting so bad that in the future, if they define things the way, and I won't say the way they want to, but in one fashion, we would have to apply for a federal permit to clean out a ditch.
I know, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yep,
Yeah,
and that's what this is getting at. To counties, NACO has been really good. The public comment ended actually, I think, February 7th.
Right.
But
NACO
NACO
did
put
respond.
together a real good paper, and they're striving to help keep us at least at the county level. So,
This basically is supporting the position of NACO. So their response to the EPA was, and they listed a whole list of concerns, but it was, to summarize that, NACO is saying, let's keep local control to the counties and other municipalities. What we're doing here is supporting NACO's position.
Great, no, I read that. I was just asking just to verify.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, I was wondering on the be it further resolved section. Should it not be forwarded to this state of Wisconsin state government so that they could also do something on the state level?
Which is around 132.
We could add that.
Yeah. I think we can add
That would be
that.
like somewhere in line 33 or 34.
Yes. I think we can just do that as a point of,
Like a friendly amendment.
yes. So you want to put that as a motion, Julie, or you just want to put it into the record as a friendly amendment?
I think a friendly amendment is fine.
Okay, all right. And I think we have that clarified. Chad, we're good?
Yes, just add the state on there. so-
Yes.
So then, yeah, that's good. We can change our resolution and our motion to include as amended. Right
And
now,
now you want to be sure and add, and my understanding is the EPA proposal goes to the United States Senate. It might also go to the House, but I want to make sure we include the Senate. So we have federal congressional delegation. And you might,
Just to be clear, this portion, this last, be it further resolved, you can add that verbiage.
yeah, make sure it gets to the Senate.
Senate.
Yes,
I think Congress includes the House and the Senate.
Congress does in general.
It
Yeah.
does.
So that's why.
Okay, so that's why you use the Congress delegate. Okay, we're good. I think we're good, correct, Chad?
Yes, so we have a motion to include an amendment as approved. Is that kind of? Include state.
So we can vote on amendment.
Okay. I think the way we're doing this, Joe, we better vote on it, so, move to make those amendments if you would.
I move to amend the resolution.
As stated, yeah.
Second,
Do I have a second?
Bruce,
second,
Okay, any further discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any further discussion? Hearing none, now we'll move on the amended document. Do I have a motion to approve the document as amended? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no opposition, the motion carries.
Are we going to send this agenda item report with the resolution to the county board?
I was planning to do that, yes.
Yes. On the 26th, right? 25th, 26th?
26.
26th.
Organization.
Okay, agenda item D, review and approve the Winnebago County Water Quality Improvement Program. You have a copy of that. We have one additional one on there. And that is for a Jerry Watrous.
Actually, we're on Ethan Calder well abandonment. It would be, so it's a little different, how we've done it in the past. I used to include the spreadsheet for cost share agreements.
Yeah, I know.
But now we have it right in the agenda. I have the details right in the agenda. That was the advice I got from finance. I can change that.
Hold it up. Review and approve. So you're only approving that specific item.
Yes, they want, so if we had 5 agreements in that agenda item, I would have to list all 5 agreements in the agenda is what they want now.
So they want the review of this project list itemized.
Yes, right, in the agenda, correct, because it's too vague is what I was told. We can't just leave it wide open for the public and we have it right in the agenda, so.
Well, I'm getting a little concerned about these directives all the time from administration. Robert's rules indicates that it's the chair's responsibility to set the agenda for the committee, not the administration. Just a point of caution. We're okay for now, I guess, right? Tom, any issues?
Don't have an issue, but it would be good to ask why the change all of a sudden.
I'm concerned we're getting something every month, new direction every month, That's why I raised the concern.
are you talking about the project list right now?
Yes, we are. We're talking about the process of how these things are put on the agenda.
Right.
Not the project list, Bruce, not the project list, it would be the cost share.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry, it's.
Yep.
in the-
okay, I'm a little confused there, too.
Yeah.
That's on the back.
Okay.
Sorry, it's on the back would be the project list. What we're talking about now is approval of cost share agreements for the county program. In the past, I would include a spreadsheet listing which contracts we wanted to get approved, so you knew the details on that. Now I'm putting the detail right in the business item by the request of our finance director.
As part of a public notice, correct?
Correct.
Specific on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I can- Okay, do you have any questions?
I move for approval.
I have a motion, do I have a second? And a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no opposition, the motion carries, and now we'll go to the back page.
Which now makes sense.
Yeah, which now makes a little more sense. Review the Land Water Conservation Department project list.
We only have one on here, the town of Wolf River. It's Jerry Watrous. He has kind of a swale going through his farm field, going right, pretty much in a channel that goes into Lake Boygan, and he's interested in doing a wetland restoration. So potentially a berm with some scrape areas. I think it could be a really nice project. So that is the only new one we have for the list this month. I just like to point out with, you guys don't see it, but I have another column that I work with the staff as far as who the lead is on the projects. And there were a third of these that were the responsibility of Mike, who, as you know, is now retired. So that just gives you an idea of how we're gonna have to delegate this work in the short term until we get somebody, so.
If I might, based on your explanation, I'm a little curious. You said you had interviewed a person, and you couldn't come together on the starting salary. I'm a little interested to know how much of a gap there was. You don't have to be specific, but generally, couple grand a year,
From my understanding, from what that person was making versus what we had to offer, we were gonna come up a little bit. It was probably about $5,000. And it would have happened probably, would be my guess.
So he's making more doing similar work somewhere else.
It wasn't exactly in our field of work, but the knowledge was there for design. So survey, design, AutoCAD, that was all there. It was just for a different type of department, but they had the experience to be able to come in and learn practices. So there wasn't a walk-in for the department. It wasn't somebody that had a bunch of land counting experience. That wasn't the case. So we're going to justify going higher up. And the other balance with this is I have existing staff that have been here 10, 15 years, and I can't bring somebody in and start them higher. That's going to create morale.
Oh,
issues in
yeah,
the department.
we've
So-
had that discussion before.
So it's that balance, but in my opinion, I really think all positions need to be looked at right now. And I know it's being talked about at the county board level, but I feel like we've fallen behind to be competitive with a lot of our positions. So I'm glad they're thinking of looking at it, and I hope the outcome is a little bit higher to be able to compete with the job.
Discussion is somewhat relevant to concerns Julie has raised and Karen also.
Yes.
You know, we're in a bit of a pickle here.
We are, and then you have to fund it, we can go through this wage study, but we have paper, we have to have money to be able to pay for it, so it'll be interesting for the board how they're gonna handle all this.
There's no wiggle room on the grant to increase the percentage of, like, you said, there's only a certain percentage that can be paid for wages. There's no wiggle room on that.
Nobody, it is what it is. So,
Chad,
yes,
are people hired under a contract or are you an at-will employer?
no contracts for us, not like this. If we did a grant, maybe, or a subcontract out work, there'd be a contract, but for all of our employees, there's no contract.
Because we're running into this with our truck side. I mean, really big with people coming in and they want whatever the going rate is, and we may have people under that right now. You just gotta pay you just have to pay what you have to pay and just get everybody equal out at some point.
Yeah.
It's just a time. What do you do? Or you don't have people.
That's right, it's the time. That's
One thing I am working on in the department right now is for some of you that have been here a while, we used to have a compressed schedule for the department where you work a longer day and have off every other Friday. So I'm working on that right now. It doesn't cost the county anything. And I think we could draw in more people with a little bit of flexibility. It looks like I should be able to hopefully get that approved. We have people off every other Friday or Monday and then work a longer day to make up for it, put in extra hours. So that's being talked about.
So we gotta pick up 8 hours
Within a pay period.
within a period.
Trying to think outside the box to. retain-
So they get an extra day a month is what you're saying?
It'd be 2 days a month.
Yeah, well, it's in the Senate. You know, I remind everybody, we took a very large step for law enforcement in this county. And that is going to trickle into everything else, which we identified in the county court. if you recall. You know, you open that can of worms, it's over. So,
There are 4 pages of openings in the county right now. I've never seen it.
certainly we need to do comparable issues specific to this department. Is there anything else? Any questions? Have a safe trip home, Bruce.
Thank you.
Yeah,
If
safe
not,
travels, Bruce.
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposition, the motion carries. We are adjourned.